Welcome. Today, we are cracking open the story of a single piece of code. A piece of code that was born from a global crisis and had a wild ambition: to build a totally new financial system, one that didn't require you to trust anyone.
So to really get where this code came from, we have to go back to 2008. The global financial system, well, it pretty much looked like a house of cards. When Lehman Brothers collapsed, it wasn't just another bank failing. No, this was a fundamental breach of trust in the very institutions we all relied on to keep things stable.
And right in the middle of all that chaos, this cryptic white paper just appears online. It came from a completely unknown person, or maybe a group, calling themselves Satoshi Nakamoto. And the idea was radical: a brand new form of digital cash that cut out the banks entirely.
This first era, you can really only describe it as the digital Wild West. It was all about anonymity, crazy experiments, and, let's be honest, a healthy dose of pure chaos as this new idea tried to find its footing.
So how does a piece of code actually get real-world value? Well, it starts with something surprisingly simple. On May 22, 2010, a day we now call Bitcoin Pizza Day, a programmer famously paid 10,000 Bitcoins for 2 pizzas. It sounds nuts now, but that was the very first time this digital token bought something physical. It proved it could be more than just some techie novelty.
But let me tell you, this Wild West was incredibly dangerous. We saw the catastrophic collapse of Mt. Gox, the first major exchange, which got hacked. Then you had the Silk Road, an online black market that used Bitcoin, which was eventually shut down by the FBI. For the early believers, the cypherpunks though, this was kind of the point. The risks were part of what made it a powerful political tool for privacy, something that could operate completely outside the system.
And that brings us to our next phase, what I like to call the Cambrian explosion. That simple idea of just peer-to-peer digital cash, it suddenly exploded into a whole universe of new and sometimes clashing possibilities.
A really groundbreaking idea started to emerge. People began asking, what if a blockchain could do more than just track money? What if it could actually run code? And that vision, that question, led to the creation of a global, decentralized computer called Ethereum.
The absolute core innovation that powered all of this was the smart contract. What does that mean? Well, essentially, money could now be programmed. You could write rules directly into the code that would execute automatically. That vending machine analogy is perfect. It's like a machine for complex agreements that just works, with no middleman needed. This new programmability just unleashed these massive hype cycles, one after another. In 2017, we had the ICO craze, where new tokens were launching every single day. Then came DeFi Summer in 2020, which was this super ambitious attempt to rebuild the entire financial system on the blockchain. And of course, the NFT explosion in 2021, which brought digital art and collectibles crashing into the mainstream.
But all this rapid growth, it wasn't all smooth sailing. It created some really deep internal conflicts. The biggest of them all was the block size wars, which was basically a fierce philosophical civil war inside the Bitcoin community over its true purpose. Was it supposed to be a fast, cheap payment system for everybody? Or is it meant to be a super secure, digital version of gold?
So while all the insiders were fighting, the outside world started to plug in. This was the moment the suits showed up. You had major companies like MicroStrategy treating Bitcoin like a corporate treasury asset. Coinbase went public on the stock market, and for a little while there, you could even buy a Tesla with Bitcoin. The mainstream had officially arrived.
But here's the thing. A lot of that explosive growth was built on some very fragile foundations. And what came next was a brutal reckoning. A great filter that would test the entire industry right to its core.
It all kicked off in May 2022. The Terra/Luna ecosystem, this huge stablecoin project valued at over $40 billion, it didn't just crash, it completely evaporated. In a matter of days, it was gone, wiping out fortunes and just shaking confidence across the entire market. And that collapse, it triggered a chain reaction. The final, massive domino to fall was the spectacular, almost unbelievable downfall of the exchange FTX and its founder, Sam Bankman-Fried. The result was an estimated $8 billion in lost customer funds.
The aftermath of these failures was, as you can imagine, swift and severe. Regulators like the SEC and the DOJ launched what a lot of people started calling the cleaning of the house. They brought intense scrutiny to the industry's biggest players and forced a maturation that was, frankly, long overdue.
This whole crisis really did act as a filter. The so-called crypto bros, the ones focused on hype and quick profits, they pretty much faded away. But the builders, the developers who were focused on making the technology faster, more secure, and easier to use, they just stayed. They kept their heads down and kept on working. And that quiet, heads-down persistence, it paid off in a massive way. In January of 2024, after years and years of rejections, spot Bitcoin ETFs were finally approved in the US. This was a landmark moment. It created a legitimate, regulated, and secure bridge between the crypto world and the very heart of Wall Street. Which brings us to today, to the current era. And we're seeing a fundamental shift. The technology is moving away from being a rebellious alternative and becoming the invisible back-end plumbing for a new kind of financial system.
The sheer scale of adoption tells the story in two different ways. First, look at the asset itself. From a value of literally zero in 2009, Bitcoin has become a globally significant store of value. But just as important is the infrastructure being built. That third bar? It represents stablecoins, digital dollars, which now have a market cap over $200 billion. These aren't just for speculation. They're becoming a core piece of the plumbing for global trade.
And now we're starting to see what people are calling the tokenization of everything. Real-world assets, I'm talking about things like real estate, gold, even US Treasury bonds, are being turned into digital tokens or on-chain assets. And they can be traded instantly all over the world on this new infrastructure.
This has completely shifted the conversation. What started as a niche interest for a few computer scientists is now a matter of national strategy. We're actually seeing sovereign nations begin to add Bitcoin to their strategic reserves, right alongside their gold. And looking forward, the future points towards something even more transformative. Think about this. As artificial intelligence becomes more autonomous, these AI agents are going to need a native currency to pay each other. Crypto provides that perfect digital-only payment rail, which could create an entire economy of machines.
So what's the ultimate takeaway here? It's that the technology is finally maturing. After years of rebellion and chaos, growing regulatory clarity is making crypto invisible. It's just integrating itself as another quiet, essential part of the global banking backend that it once wanted to replace.
And this whole journey leaves us with one final, provocative thought to chew on. As more and more of our physical assets become nothing more than digital tokens represented by lines of code, what does ownership even mean anymore? In this new world, who really controls the value?